The Tom Woods Show, episode 1944.
Prepare to set fire to the index card of allowable opinion. Your daily dose of liberty education starts here. The Tom Woods Show.
Hey guys, I'm Scott filling in for Tom. He's doing better. I talk to him. He's better every day. So in a few more days, he'll be all the way better, I guess. But right now, I'm helping fill in for Tom here on the Tom Woods Show. I have a very special guest for you today. It's the great Dan McKnight from BringOurTroopsHome.us. Welcome back to the, well, not back to the show. I don't know if you've been on this show. Welcome back to my show on Tom's show. How are you doing, Dan?
Good, Scott. How you doing?
I'm doing great. You've talked to Tom before, haven't you?
I think we've spoken. I don't think I've been on his show yet, though.
Oh, okay. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you were in the Marines and the Army and the Idaho National Guard, where I think you were a sergeant, right? Tell us a little bit about your career there.
Yeah. So, a couple years in the Marine Corps, transferred to the Army under Clinton when he was trying to defund the Marine Corps and no one could go to schools or get promoted. And then after a few years in the Army, I left and came back home and joined the National Guard, did a short tour, got out, and then rejoined after September 11th. And decided I wanted to go fight the war and win that son of a gun on my own. And then went to Afghanistan with the Idaho Army National Guard in 2005 through 2007. Mm-hmm. Since that time, I went dormant, came home pissed off about the war, felt like we wasted about 10 years. And in 2019, when my Senator Jim Risch, through seniority and attrition, became the chairman of the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, and I decided I was going to reach out to him because I had a past sort of relationship with him and asked him if he would find a way to find an end to the war and kind of launch me into this political atmosphere where I'm helping like-minded veterans of the global war on terror speak their truth, that they're tired of this war, that they're tired of fighting in the global war on terror in places that we have no national interest in, that we don't buy into the bull crap that we've been spoon-fed since George W. Bush and his cronies took us into two different wars that have lasted over 20 years.
Yeah. All right. So now let's talk a little bit about, especially Afghanistan, since that's the war you fought in. Where were you stationed there? Tell us a little bit about that and your contact with your senator, soon to become governor there, and all of that.
Yeah, sure. We were the Idaho Army National Guard. We were attached to the 10th Mountain Division, which is an active duty Army division, and the 82nd Airborne Division. And this was real early in the global war on terror. And the National Guard had not been used as war fighters or as auxiliary forces for the active duty military very much throughout history. In the global war on terror, the writing was on the wall that they needed more troops, more bodies, more people. And so they started using the National Guard. Well, the active duty military didn't think the National Guard was on the same plane as the active duty military. They thought we were part-time soldiers, not really worthy of the same respect or the same capabilities as what the military could do. And so neither the 10th Mountain nor the 82nd Airborne really wanted to take responsibility for this Idaho Army National Guard unit. And so we were having a real hard time negotiating the supply system. And we got stationed in a place called Salerno in the Coast Province. And from there, we went into the Pesh River Valley up near the Korengal and the Hindu Kush Range, northeastern Afghanistan, where some of the worst war fighting was going on at the time. And that's where all the insurgents were coming in from Pakistan. And it was called the Valley of Death.
Yeah, there's a brand new book out called The Hardest Place. That's all about that.
Absolutely. I saw the prelude for that. I haven't read it yet, but I did see it. So we were there. I just
started reading it, and it's right about, I guess, where the Korengal Valley meets the Pesh Valley. Is that it?
Yep, that's right where we're at, just above a little town called Asadabad. And we were in Asadabad and Jalalabad and all up and down that Pesh River Valley. That was our theater of operation. And it's really rugged terrain. It's really rough. It's hard on bodies. It's hard on equipment. And we had a hard time getting replacement boots, helmets, body armor, uniforms, gloves. We couldn't get any of it because neither the 82nd Airborne nor the 10th Mountain Division wanted to be responsible for us. And so I got frustrated with my chain of command. I thought they were inept and they weren't doing their best effort to take care of the lower enlisted troops. And so out of frustration, I grabbed a satellite phone and climbed to the top of a mountain in the Pesh River Valley where I could get a real clear signal. And a friend of mine gave me the phone number for the governor of Idaho, who had just been appointed governor. He was our lieutenant governor, and he'd just been appointed governor about a month before. And the governor is the commander-in-chief of the state National Guard. And so I called him, and it was a guy named Governor Jim Risch. And I called him. I said, Governor Risch, this is Sergeant Dan McKnight with the Idaho Army National Guard. I'm calling you from the Pesh River Valley in Afghanistan. I hope I have your attention. And I went on to tell him what was going on. He listened very intently, asked some good questions. And then he said, Dan, I've only been the governor for about a minute. He goes, I don't know what I can do, but I'm going to do something. And satisfied that somebody with some weight, some pull was going to do something to help us, I hung up the phone. And 48 hours later, I got notification from my chain of command that two things had happened. One, they'd taken away my satellite phone and told me never to call anybody ever again. And two, that the supplies that we needed were on their way. Governor Risch had come through. And they didn't know what I'd done or who I'd called, but they were shocked that I was able to get that taken care of. And so I always held Jim Risch up on this pedestal as a hero, defender of the troops, a guy that will do whatever it takes. Well, fast forward 12, 13, 14 years, and Governor Risch is now Senator Risch. And he's been in Washington, D.C. long enough that he's become the senior member of the Republican Party on the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. And when the Republicans took over in 2019 of the Senate, he became the chairman of that committee. So he's now the second or third most powerful man in the entire United States Senate when it comes to matters of foreign policy. Second only to probably President Bush and maybe the Secretary of State. And like I said, I'd gone underground. I'd been pissed off. I came home. My mind wasn't right. And I'd just gone dormant. But when he became the chairman, I thought, I'm going to reach out to old Jim Risch again. He's a hero of mine. And I'm going to ask him to end the war. I'm going to ask him to use that chairmanship to do what other Idaho senators like William Borah and Frank Church had done in World War I and in Vietnam. And they'd use that position to actually fight to end the wars. And so I wrote him a guest opinion because he wouldn't take my phone call now. Now he's an important senator, right? Not just a sharecropper from Idaho. So I wrote a guest opinion, and a local newspaper picked it up and published it. And then 8 more newspapers published it in the state of Idaho. And Jim Risch came back to Boise a week later, and I grabbed a buddy of mine with a camera. And I went to the event he was at, and I said, I'm going to question him, and I'm going to get it on film, and I'm going to hold him accountable to his answer. And so I stood up in front of this event at a Chamber of Commerce, and I introduced myself, and he stopped me right there. He goes, Dan, I remember you. I remember your situation. I remember helping you. I read your guest opinion, and I agree with you. We're done nation building in a country that just doesn't want us there. He made a powerful policy statement in Boise, Idaho that turned the George W. Bush and Barack Obama years on their head. We were done nation building. And I thought, my God, I've done my job again, and Jim Risch is going to do it. He's going to go back to D.C. He's going to take up our cause. And that son of a gun got on an airplane, went back to Washington, D.C., and voted 3 more times over the next 90 days to extend the wars in Afghanistan, Yemen, and Syria indefinitely. And so I knew at that point, Jim Risch was a lost cause. Washington, D.C. was corrupt. And I needed to gather like-minded veterans to come together and finally stand up and say enough is enough. And that's how we started our organization, Bring Our Troops Home. And we started our assault on Washington, D.C.
All right. So, man, hell of a story. Now, before we talk about Bring Our Troops Home, I want to ask you a little bit about what you think about what's going on in Afghanistan right now, as they really have abandoned Kandahar Airfield and Bagram Air Base, both. And they're pulling out the vast bulk of their forces. They claim they're only leaving 1 division to protect the embassy and some CIA and some mercs behind. And the Taliban is taking over broad swaths of the country, or at least, remaining in fixed positions in territory that they've already controlled for a very long time here. But they're putting major pressure on, if you saw just the latest, major pressure on Kandahar City, Lashkar Gah, Herat, and, other provincial capitals that I'm forgetting right now. So what do you make of all of that now in the year 2021?
Sure. No, hey, look, we've been lobbying to have this withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan since 2019. So I'm, in my 3rd full year of doing this. And we've always said since day one that we know that when we leave, it's going to create chaos in the country. But that is not our responsibility. That is not our job as soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines to ensure stability in a landlocked country in Southwest Asia, where we have no national security interest, where we went to war on false premise, and we carried out a mission that was over 4 months after we got there, and we kept staying there for 20 years. And so the chaos was going to happen whether we left now or whether we left in 2050 or 2070, or as Liz Cheney said in her office to one of our members, if we ever left ever, if we were there forever, that chaos would still be there. So I think it's good that we pulled out. It was, Trump announced the withdrawal and then didn't quite have the intestinal fortitude to get it done in his first term. And President Biden just executed the Trump withdrawal following the Doha deal. And I'm not a big fan of Joe Biden, but I'm going to say it like it is. He did the right thing. He did the right thing. He followed the wishes of 75% of the military that has said that enough is enough and it's time to come home from that war. And he did it. And it's devastating to see what happened. But it's also devastating to know that we were fighting the wrong people there. We were in Afghanistan in a state of war, participating in combat operations in a place that Congress had never declared war. We should have never been there because we went there without proper authorization. And the war got away from us because we let the idiot in chief, George W. Bush, take his eye off the mission and take us into another illegal war and continue a perpetual war over and over and over again indefinitely, because of the bloodlust and the money lust of the military-industrial complex. So us leaving Afghanistan, kudos to Joe Biden, kudos to President Trump for initiating it, and my applause to everybody except for that Secretary of Defense that shed all those tears for all the damage that was going to be done after we left. Screw that guy.
Yeah, well, and speaking of him, the headline on antiwar.com right now, as we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon here, is that U.S. continues to step up airstrikes against the Taliban. And this is in direct violation of the peace deal and is really the first breaking of the ceasefire by the U.S. against the Taliban since the beginning of the negotiations under Trump. And I wonder whether you think that that's the Pentagon is trying to provoke. First of all, they're trying to push Joe Biden, right, and trying to get him to agree to let them strike in whatever circumstances. But do you worry that they're trying to provoke the Taliban into fighting back and looking for an excuse to cancel the withdrawal and stay? Do you think that's a real danger, maybe?
Of course it is. I don't think anybody thinks that President Joe Biden's acting on his own in anything he does. So when the Secretary of Defense is shedding tears and crying publicly over the, what's going to happen in Afghanistan after we left, but refuses to shed a single tear for a mother, a widow, a fatherless child of an American soldier that died in a war that wasn't authorized, that Millie is pulling some strings, Austin, is pulling some strings to try and keep us there. The military-industrial complex is so strong that they will do anything they can to keep that perpetual gravy machine going. They want that constant state of war to justify all the additional stars they pin on their collars, the $1 million salaries they get after they leave the military, and to keep supplying the bullets, the bombs, and the beans to the boys that are over there fighting in these unauthorized and endless wars of choice. President Biden's really got to watch his six on this because he does not have people surrounding him that have an America First policy or a vision.
Yeah. Well, now, so here's the thing. You have taken up this mantle with bringourtroopshome.us, and you've got a very particular strategy of, well, I don't want to say bypassing D.C. because I don't want to oversimplify the thing, but you're really working at the state level to try to change the game and change, I guess, the entire nature of the conversation about the use of American military power in these wars. So tell us all about bringourtroopshome.us and what you guys are up to.
Absolutely. So we took 100 veterans and state lawmakers back to D.C. in November of 2019 to meet our members of Congress and to look them in the eye and tell them that we're done with war and we want them to advocate for an end of these wars of choice. And we were so disappointed by the response and the lack of understanding of proper U.S. foreign policy and the enumerated powers to declare war that we came home from that thinking, my God, Washington, D.C. is lost. And in fact, one of our members went in to meet with Representative Liz Cheney and asked her to support a policy, any policy, that would help bring an end to the war. And she said no. So we rephrased the question and said, well, at what point in the future would you support a withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan? And she goes, I can't support that position at all. And then so we sharpened our pencil and asked again, well, when would you like America to come home from Afghanistan? And she said, never. We'll never come home from Afghanistan. So we left Washington, D.C. thinking, we can't fight this war there. We can't take our cause to Washington, D.C. They're lost. And so we came back home and we met up with a gentleman named Delegate Pat McGeehan. And he's a legislator in West Virginia who has run this concept, a bill called Defend the Guard. And he's done it for a few years. And what the concept of Defend the Guard is it's a 10th Amendment approach to the use and the control of the National Guard. And the bill is very simple. It's less than one page. And it says that if the states are to release their National Guard into federal service to fight in an overseas war or in support of a war, before that can happen, Congress has to declare war, which is required by Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution, right? Congress shall declare war. And so we're using the state's power over their militia, the National Guard, which is an auxiliary force for the active duty military, to take that ability from the military to fight these wars on multiple fronts indefinitely and forever without the National Guard. And it started off in West Virginia, and he's been running it for 5 years. And now we're in 31 states, just 3 years into this. And we were in 31 states this year. And we just got back from the American Legislative Exchange Council conference in Salt Lake City, where we signed up 5 new states just last week. And so we'll be in 36 states, and our goal is to be in 50 states with this legislation by January. And so we're taking the fight to the states and letting the states tell the federal government that if you want our sons and daughters, our tradesmen, our police officers, our teachers, who are part-time citizen soldiers, to deploy over and over and over again to these endless wars of choice, then Congress first, you must do your job. You must declare war as required by the Constitution.
Yeah. Well, and in this case, you're really using the Constitution of the United States of America as a poison pill, because that's exactly what it is, isn't it? If Congress had to take responsibility for declaring these wars, well, they just wouldn't declare them. And then that would be it.
Right. And Congress will never declare war. They won't do it because they don't want to have to go home and look their constituents in the eye and explain why they are authorizing to send their sons and daughters off to fight and die in a war in the Horn of Africa or Ethiopia or Afghanistan or Yemen or Syria. And so Congress doesn't want that responsibility, but it's theirs. And they've willfully given it away to an executive branch. Both Republicans and Democrats have done this. And it's time for Congress to stand up and reclaim that authority, reclaim their rights, their powers under the enumerated powers in the Constitution, and actually defend and represent the people of the United States of America.
And now, so if they wanted to do an Iraq War II style invasion or an Afghanistan style invasion right now, could they do that without the Guard?
Sure, they could. Most of the active duty military is back at their home bases right now because we've brought them home or redeployed them out of these combat zones. So sure, they could do it. It would be very difficult. It would vacate a lot of military bases around the country, and it would put a lot of strain on the active duty military that for the first 5 or 6 years of the global war on terror, they were deploying every other year. They were gone for a year, home for a year, gone for a year, home for a year, over and over and over and over again. And I think the military would have a hard time sustaining that. I think they could launch the attack and then put the military and the United States in a compromised position where now the use of the National Guard makes sense because we can't abandon the mission, right? We can't give up the ground that we fought so hard to gain. All the things that we heard all the think tanks and the generals that would stand in front of the big microphones throughout the Iraq II and Iraq III invasions, that we had to do it for the sake of America, for freedom, for apple pie and baseball. We had to send the National Guard to defend the ground that we'd gained.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about what the propaganda is like. I don't watch TV really ever since Hillary Clinton started running for president. I just turned it off and left it off. But certainly when I was growing up, the narrative was, well, the Army's the Army and the Marines and everything. But the National Guard is there essentially for forest fires and floods. And, essentially you need your government to be that tightly organized in the case of natural disasters. Essentially, I guess if you lived out in LA and the very worst riot got completely out of control, then the National Guard's job would be to back up the civilian domestic police forces, something like that. But
sure. So
then I guess it must feel like a bait and switch to a lot of these guys. I remember there's a famous picture from Iraq War II of these guys driving around in a Humvee, and there's a big cardboard sign on the windshield that said 2 weeks a year and 2 weekends a month, my ass, or something like that,
Right. Well, Scott, the National Guard in the militia clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15, the militia has a threefold mission, right? To repel an invasion, to put down an insurrection, and to enforce the laws of the Union. Going to war with the National Guard only makes sense legally, only has authorization legally if going to war is to enforce the laws of the Union. And that law would be a declaration of war. That becomes the law. And so I think the National Guard has a place fighting America's wars when war is necessary. Now, I'm as anti-war as they come, But if there's a need and a purpose and a true reason, not some made-up bullcrap that Colin Powell or George W. Bush or anybody else is pushing, a real true reason for the United States to go to war, to defend our interests and our people, I think the National Guard should be on the front of that spear. They should be the tip of it, because they're really the only military that's even authorized under the Constitution. The standing army was never meant to be. And so if we want to take our sons and daughters, whether they're active duty military or National Guard or reserves, off to fight a war, authorize it properly, give proper oversight, give them the mission, and then get the hell out of the way and let the boys and girls go do what they do. And then let them come home. And that's our thing. Let the troops come home. Bring our troops home once the mission is accomplished.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that I learned from you about this is that, maybe the idea would be, I guess my idea would be that the Guard and or the reserves, you guys kind of hold down the fort down at the base, while the active duty Army infantry are the ones out there really doing the fighting. And you guys are kind of picking up the slack for them in the rear. But then I find out that's really not right. That, in fact, the more I read about this, there were National Guard Green Berets helping the Delta Force at Tora Bora. And then I guess I learned from you that, there are special operations forces and all different divisions of the National Guard units that have been fighting like hell this whole time.
Yeah.
No
Absolutely.
different from the Army infantry on the ground, really.
Yeah, I've got a really good friend here in Eagle, Idaho. There was National Guard Green Beret. And on his seventh combat deployment, he and his best friend and their team were blown up. And so he rolled the dice 6 times and came up fine. But on the 7th deployment, he got snake eyes and he was blown up and his best friend was killed and he was injured horribly. And when he came back to the United States, because he was National Guard, the active military dumped him off at Fort Lewis, Washington, and said, all right, go back to Boise, Idaho and get your treatment and your care for your combat injuries there. Well, shit, I'm sorry. Boise, Idaho is not equipped for the traumatic brain injuries, the PTSD, the loss of limbs, the devastation that comes from roadside bombs and explosions that happen in combat. Meanwhile, all of his active duty Green Beret friends that were injured in the exact same attack were flown to Walter Reed. And so he came back to Boise, Idaho, not knowing how to even find the proper care for his traumatic brain injuries, his PTSD, his damaged hip, back, and spine. And so he ended up going back down to UCLA, where they volunteered to take care of him. A state university hospital took care of one of our wounded soldiers because the active duty military wouldn't do it. And it was a disgrace. It's not the way it's supposed to happen. The uniform fits the same whether you're a National Guardsman or you're active duty. And if you're a Green Beret in the National Guard, you should be treated like a Green Beret on active duty. And it's just not that way.
Yeah. Boy, there is a big lie from Iraq War II that they never really confronted, was that this will definitely be different from Vietnam in the way that the troops are taken care of, because nobody loves the troops more than George W. Bush and his government. And everybody gets a raise and everybody can know you're definitely going to get all the medical care you deserve, et cetera, at the end of the thing. And that it wouldn't be like Vietnam at all in that way. And yet here we are,
now,
same thing.
Now, if we're lucky, maybe George W. Bush will paint your portrait with his watercolors. I mean, that's how much he loves us.
Well, we should have learned the lesson from his father's Iraq War syndrome, or, Gulf War syndrome illness from the last time around. Illnesses, I guess I should say. And people should have known better there.
Hey, everybody, remember me, Tom Woods, host of The Tom Woods Show? I'd like to interrupt this excellent conversation Scott Horton is having to thank our very important sponsor, Policy Genius. And I haven't been feeling well, so you're under special moral obligation to listen to me, okay? Back to school season is coming up. You're going to be really distracted, and it's going to be easy to forget to do something you need to do as part of your adulting process, and that is getting life insurance for people who depend on you. Policy Genius makes it easy to compare quotes from over a dozen top insurers. You could save $1,300 or more per year on life insurance by using Policy Genius to compare policies. The licensed experts at Policy Genius work for you, not the insurance company, so you can trust them to help you navigate every step of the shopping and buying process. They've gotten thousands of 5-star reviews across Trustpilot and Google, and eligible applicants can get covered in as little as a week, thanks to an award-winning policy option that swaps the standard medical exam requirement for a simple phone call. Well, getting started is easy. Just head to policygenius.com. In minutes, you're working out how much life insurance coverage you need and comparing personalized quotes to find your best price. And then when you're ready to apply, the Policy Genius team will handle the paperwork and scheduling for free. They don't add on extra fees. So, Head to PolicyGenius.com to get started right now. Policy Genius. When it comes to insurance, it's nice to get it right.
Anyway, so talk about your relationship with, BringOurTroopsHome.us, your organization, and its relationship with Young Americans for Liberty and whoever else that you're working with on pushing this Defend the Guard legislation. And we really should emphasize here, right, that you got Republicans introducing this and co-signed with Democrats. But it's really Young Americans for Liberty, in other words, Ron Paul leaning type Republicans in these state houses that are leading the way on this, right?
Absolutely. That when we look for a new bill sponsor, we go in there with a certain lens on. We are looking for the Ron Paulers. We're looking for the Liberty First, America First type people that believe in, one, the Constitution, and two, in a responsible foreign policy. And we find those guys, they're typically members of awesome organizations like the Mises Institute, right? Young Americans for Liberty, Campaign for Liberty, even some guys that are associated loosely with like Concerned Veterans for America. We're able to identify those guys, and it takes exactly 30 seconds to convince them of the merits of this bill. They just get it, right? Because they understand the concept, they understand the language, they understand the 10th Amendment, and it takes zero effort whatsoever to get them to sign on to the bill. The problem is those guys are so few in number in these state legislatures that they have to often align themselves with establishment Republicans and establishment Democrats to find support to get their bills through committees. And so we do have sponsors that are Democrats. We've got an awesome Democrat out in Hawaii, Dale Kobayashi, fantastic representative, and he's carrying the bill out there for the third year in a row. We've got libertarians like Marshall Burt in Wyoming who have carried the bill. We've got liberty guys like Aaron Elward in South Dakota, Anthony Sabatini, who's kind of the firebrand down in Florida that's carrying it, Brian Slayton, who was a freshman in Texas, who took on the entire establishment with this bill, and you were there for the hearing. It was incredible. And so we've got this coalition of just ragtag, modern-day freedom fighters that are taking this bill to the states. And groups like Young American for Liberty and the Ron Paul Institute, the Mises Institute are really the allies in this. It's amazing some of the stuff that's happening. And in fact, up in Montana this year, even Americans for Prosperity, a group that we're not super aligned with on many things, but on this issue, they're just plain right and they get it. They passed a resolution up there that you even testified on behalf of, asking Congress to end the forever wars of choice. And it was kind of the resolution was kind of a peace offering of sorts because we couldn't get Defend the Guard introduced to Montana because they have a lot of squish legislators. But the resolution was taken up there and it passed overwhelmingly with only 3 or 4 opposing votes. Mm-hmm. And so the coalition is broad. It's based on modern day global war on terror veterans, a bunch of guys that look like me that are, we're in our 40s or maybe late 30s. We still look the part. We still have the fade haircuts. We're not counterculturists, right? We're not the born on the 4th of July, anti-Vietnam hippies that came home from that war. We maintain our military appearance. We still associate with military associations. I would still pick up a rifle today if my country called on me for an actual purpose that that was an actual declared war. And we are taking this fight in a manner that only we can do. We kick in a door and they have to look us in the eye and they can't tell us that we're full of garbage because we've been there. We've bled on that battlefield. We've lost our friends and we've sacrificed everything, marriages, businesses, mental health, physical health, for this global war on terror that needs to end. And so we have more credibility than any Haight-Ashbury hippie or born on the 4th of July Veterans for Peace guys that came home from Vietnam, who we love those guys because they were right. But we have more credibility at this point because we still look like we're ready to pick up a rifle and storm the beach.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just basically on the most basic level, you guys lean right, broadly defined. And so absolutely that helps. And as you say, veterans of these wars, the 21st century wars. So not long-haired Vietnam stuff, but this, whole new era. And you guys define it. It's what you say it is, Dan. And you're doing such great work there. And I'm glad you mentioned Americans for Prosperity and the resolution in Montana, because it seems like there's really a basis for real agreement and working together on both of these things, where if we could get both sides of this to support both things, where we're trying to push this anti-AUMF resolution that's a demand that the U.S. Congress repeal the AUMF. And they're talking about repealing the Iraq AUMF, but what's that have to do with anything? It's the 2001 AUMF that has everything to do with everything. And that was what the Montana resolution was about. And see if we can get, bring our troops home and Young Americans for Liberty behind that, and see if, on a handshake, then we can get Americans for Prosperity and Concerned Veterans for America to come out and work with us on the Defend the Guard legislation. And then we got the best of both worlds. And we're both working for both things that are, obviously in no way contradictory and only complementary.
Right. Yeah. It's strange bedfellows on this issue, right? I mean, I don't agree with a lot of
strange,
those.
Hell,
Right. On other issues, we probably don't agree on a lot of things. We probably don't agree on nationalized healthcare. We probably don't agree on borders or prison reform or income tax policy, but we do agree on this. It's time for America to bring our troops home from these endless wars of choice. And if we ever have to go back, then by God, we should do it in the manner that is prescribed by the Constitution. When we raise our hand to an oath in the military, we believe it, right? It's not just lip service. When Congress raises their hand to the exact same oath that we take, it's for pictures, it's for a photo op, and they don't actually live that creed. We lived it, we breathed it, we bled for it. And so we take it very seriously. And if they want to honor veterans, everyone always says, we support the troops, we love the military, we honor veterans, we give them free fajitas on Veterans Day. You know what? If you want to truly honor veterans, quit making so many combat veterans. Quit forcing them to go fight these wars that have no direct influence, need, or cause in the United States defense of our own nation.
Yeah. And look, for whatever reason, they like me in Montana, but I saw the way it went in Texas here at the state legislature, and I should have just stayed in the audience and let you guys handle it, because, boy, not that they did exactly what you wanted, but, the amount of respect and deference that they gave to all of you guys. And when our friend, I'm sorry, I forgot his first name, Sharp, the West Point guy, officer.
Yeah.
When he told them, Daniel Webster once said, they were like, wow, Daniel Webster. So here's a West Point guy quoting a founding father. What a double whammy. And all of a sudden, they're like, wow, geez, maybe this really is important. So it just goes to show that, seriously, just like you're saying, bunch of Republican combat veterans showing up and saying this is what they want. It's very impressive to those congressmen, and it may take a couple of years to start getting this thing passed, but I think it will start getting passed. And then the broader narrative in the country that this is happening from the state level up and being led from the right is going to be such a powerful narrative. And it's something already that's so important and worth building on,
I agree. And we just had, a month or so ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, we had a national feature media piece done by PBS NewsHour, right? Not exactly a small right-leaning news organization.
That was really
PBS
impressive.
News,
yeah.
It was a great piece, right? It was about a 20-minute piece about the efforts. It was fair. They got the military-industrial complex's point of view on it. They got the National Guard Bureau's view on the legislation. And then they featured a couple of legislators, including the current Lieutenant Governor of Idaho, Janice McGeehan, who is now running for governor and supports Defend the Guard. So if she wins, it'll be the first executive we have at the state level that supports this legislation. Wow, we have attacked this thing in a very strategic and effective and efficient manner. And we've done it on a shoestring budget. But these things take money. These things take organization. These things take troops. And so if there's anybody out there that wants to get in the fight, I'd encourage them to go to defendtheguard.us and just click on your state. There's a map there. Click on your state and see if there's a sponsor for your bill. And if there's not, put your name in there and we'll get in touch with you and we'll find a sponsor. And if anywhere on the page where you have a place to sign up for our newsletter, fill that out one time and we'll send you our newsletters, our updates, and we'll keep you in the fight. And we'll count you as a veteran or a supporter that we can lean on when we're ready to testify in your state before the Veterans Affairs Committee or the House, the House Affairs Committee or wherever the bill ends up. And when we have to pack those rooms, we know that we can lean on representatives and veterans from that state to show up and express their concern and their support for the Defend the Guard legislation. And then finally, one last thing. We have an organization called the 10-7 Club, 10-7, October 7th. It's the day the war in Afghanistan started in 2001. So we started the 10-7club.com. And that's how we raise the funds that we use to fight this battle. It's a monthly subscription. It can be $1, $5, $10. $10 is the ideal amount to support this cause. And for $10, you'll be entered in to win guns that we give away every quarter. We gave away an AR-15 last quarter. This time we're doing an NK1 bullpup shotgun, which is a shotgun on an AR platform. We give away comm gear, body armor, things that veterans really dig, right? And so I'd encourage people to go to 107club.com and sign up for that, and you'll get our regular communications and share this message. The biggest need is obviously the funds to fight this and the bodies to show up to testify. And those two things is probably the biggest thing we can do to help these states have the backbone to take on the military-industrial complex.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because it really was important to have 3, 4, 5, 6 of you guys testifying in a row on this. And it really did, make a difference to the legislators there. I saw, especially in person. It was harder in Maine, but especially in person here with so many guys in Texas doing it. And now on 10-7, that's what, 10-7, or how's that work?
No, it's TENSEVEN
okay.
club.com. So it's the whole thing, 10-7 spelled out.
Okay, so 107club.com to help support, defendtheguard.us to get involved, help testify and participate in the thing, work with your state legislators on it, and then bringourtroopshome.us is the mothership there and the organization behind it all, bringourtroopshome.us. And great work as always. Thank you so much for doing the show, Dan. Really appreciate it a lot.
You bet, Scott. Thanks for having me on, and my best to Tom.
All right, you guys. And I'm Scott Horton. I'm at scotthorton.org. I got 5,500 something interviews for you there. I'm the editor of antiwar.com. I'm the director of the Libertarian Institute, which Tom is on our board. Did you know that? libertarianinstitute.org, and got lots of great podcasts and writers and all your favorite guys there at libertarianinstitute.org. And then I wrote some books, Fool's Errand, Time to End the War in Afghanistan, and Enough Already, Time to End the War on Terrorism. And did I say antiwar.com? Antiwar.com, antiwar.com, antiwar.com. Thank you guys so much. Oh, and one more thing. I'm speaking at the Young Americans for Liberty Convention on Friday morning, 9 a.m. in Orlando. So Google that up. All right, you guys, thank you so much.
Become a smarter libertarian in just 30 minutes a day. Visit TomWoods.com to subscribe to the show for free, and we'll see you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.